Cooper Kupp had one of the best receiving seasons of all time and couldn't even make a 99 overall. Jamar Chase and Michael Parsons had two of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen, and they couldn't even break a 90 overall. And if you thought that stuff was disrespectful, wait till you see today's new ratings from EA Sports. Starting with the top 10 running backs, we've got Derrick Henry coming in at a 97, Nick Chubb and Christian McCaffrey tied at a 96, Jonathan Taylor at a 95, Dalvin Cook at a 94, Joe Mixon at a 93, Alvin Kamara at a 90, Aaron Jones at an 89, and Austin Eckler and Ezekiel Elliott at an 88 round out the top 10. Now we're going to look at the rest of the running backs and the safeties a little bit later in the video, but let's talk about this top 10. A lot of people are mad that Christian McCaffrey is still the second highest rated running back in the game and has not dropped despite missing almost 2 full seasons. Now me personally, I don't think a player should simply drop just because he had the unfortunate luck of a bad injury. It should go off of how he played last time he was healthy, but the problem is EA drops a lot of other players for simply being injured, and Christian McCaffrey is one of those guys that just doesn't get the same treatment. I'm just looking for a little consistency here. Also, I think Jonathan Taylor at this point has proven that he is better than the 4th best running back in the league. If nothing else, he should at least be tied with McCaffrey and Chubb. Maybe you could drop McCaffrey a couple like you do everybody else and bump Jonathan Taylor up. I have no problem with Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb being in the top 2 spots, but Jonathan Taylor should definitely be right there with them. I think you could argue Joe Mixon, after finally being healthy and showing what he could do with a full season, could be a point or two higher, but I'm not too mad at it. Alvin Kamara at a 90 does feel kind of low and disrespectful, but he is coming off his worst season. Not that it was really his fault. His O-line was injured much of the year, and everybody around him was injured all year. He had 3rd string and 4th string quarterbacks. There were no receiving threats on the team, so when he was out there, he was literally the only thing to key in on, and it resulted in a lack of production. Now let's take a look at the top 10 running backs by speed. Raheem Mostert still coming in at number 1 with 95. He definitely is the fastest in the league. Jonathan Taylor right behind him with 94. Derrick Henry still up there with 93. He's a big guy, but he can move. We got rookie Kenneth Walker coming in with 93 speed, along with Matt Breida, Ty Chandler, and Tony Pollard. And you got Nathan Cottrell and Nick Chubb rounding out the top 10 with 92 speed. And here are the top 10 running backs at breaking tackles. Nick Chubb at number 1 with the 98, which I don't mind. He definitely is the best tackle breaker in the league. Jonathan Taylor number 2 at a 95. I don't mind. Then you've got Javonte Williams, Dalvin Cook, and James Robinson right behind him. Then you got Josh Jacobs, and then you get to Derrick Henry. 91 just feels low. I know he's more of a downhill tackle breaker, more of a stiff arm guy, but he does still break a good amount of tackles. 91 for a guy like him who just runs over people seems a little bit too low. Then you've got Alvin Kamara at a 90. For his size, he does break a lot of tackles. And then you got Joe Mixon and Kareem Hunt coming in at an 89. And here are the top 10 juke move running backs. You got Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones at 94. You've got Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey at 93. Joe Mixon and Ezekiel Elliott at a 92. Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt at a 91. And Melvin Gordon and Saquon Barkley at a 90. Now let's continue on with the rest of the running back ratings. We've got Josh Jacobs and Leonard Fournette tied at 11 with an 87 overall. I'm actually surprised they gave Leonard Fournette this much. I thought he would be a little lower. He definitely had a little bit of a resurgence last year and definitely got better in the receiving game, but I also don't think that he's that close to Austin Eckler. I feel like Austin Eckler at an 88, you could argue he could be up at like a 90 and Leonard Fournette maybe at like a 85, 86. I'm not too mad at it. I just don't think they're that close as players. Kareem Hunt at 86 seems about fine for where he's at now. Saquon Barkley at 86, he's just a tough player to grade because his first 2 seasons were pretty darn good. Last 2 years, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. He has been on the field some, but also has not been dealing with the best offensive lines. He's just really a hard guy to gauge. I do think talent-wise, he is better than an 86, but because of his situation, it's hard to really know for sure based on what he's got to work with. Cordell Patterson comes in at an 85, which seems about right. Now, he did have a pretty good season last year. He burst onto the scene as a full-time running back. I looked at his numbers and I actually remembered them being better than they actually were, so I think 85 and at his age makes sense. Maybe you could bump him up 1 or 2, but I think he's about in the right range. Najee Harris is at an 85 after a solid rookie season. I'm okay with that. David Montgomery always feels a little underrated, but also he's never really been in the best situation, so he can't put out the production that he probably would be able to if his team was better. Then you got James Robinson at an 84, Cam Akers at an 83, Chris Carson, another guy that I feel gets underrated at 83. He's been dealing with injuries as well, but when he is able to be on the field, I feel like he is better than an 83 overall. Going to the next group of guys, you've got Melvin Gordon at an 83, Damian Harris at an 82, Javonte Williams at an 82. I would have bumped him up a couple. I thought he was really solid as a rookie, and I think he's gonna have almost a Jonathan Taylor-esque second year. Maybe not as good because that was a crazy season, but I think he's gonna really burst onto the scene and get more of the full-time carries, and I think he's gonna jump up the ratings really quickly. Miles Sanders comes in at 82. You've got Devin Singletary, J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, and Tony Pollard all at an 81. Then you've got A.J. Dillon and Antonio Gibson at an 80. DeAndre Swift comes in at an 80, which I think is low. His skill set is really good. He's one of the better receiving backs in the league, and and I think this year he's going to really take that next step. 80 just feels a little low. I think he could be bumped up 2 or 3 points as well. You've got a bunch of guys here at 79. Chase Edmonds, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Henderson, Kenyon Drake. I'm not mad at that. Gus Edwards, J.D. McKissick, Naheem Hines, and Raheem Mostert coming in at a 78. Now let's look at the top 10 safeties. We got Tyrann Mathieu still holding down the top spot at 94. Derwin James comes in at 93. Budda Baker and Kevin Byard come in at a 92. Micah Hyde and Justin Simmons at a 91. Jesse Bates, Jordan Poyer, Harrison Smith, and Jamal Adams come in at a 90. Now I'm honestly not too mad at the top 10 safeties. I do think Derwin James will probably end the year as the top safety, but Tyrann Mathieu still barely holding on that spot right now I think is okay. I'm actually surprised they gave Kevin Byard some love. He's been one of the most consistent best safeties in the league for a few years, and it seems like he always comes in around at 88, 89, maybe a 90. They finally bumped him up and gave him a little bit more love. Justin Simmons is the one guy I would say feels a little too low, because I don't know that I look at Justin Simmons and think he's the 4th best safety in the league. If anything, I would have him right up there with Byard and Budda Baker, maybe even Derwin James, maybe just right behind him. I think even just bumping him up 1, I know that may not be the biggest deal, but I just think he should be represented with those other guys. I don't think he's the 4th best safety in the league. Same with Jesse Bates. I don't think Jesse Bates is lower than all those guys. I think he's right up there with Budda Baker, Kevin Byard, Justin Simmons. So I feel like all those guys should probably be at like around a 92, and I think that would be a little more accurate. So let's take a look at the rest of the safeties from 11 on down. We've got Minkah Fitzpatrick at an 89. A lot of people don't like Minkah Fitzpatrick's rating. He does seem like he's always a little underrated in Madden. I don't hate it. I don't know that he's as good as some of the other top guys. Some people think he is. I think it's really a preference thing. He's a very controversial player. 89, I think you could say he deserves to at least be in the 90s. That's kind of always been my outlook. I feel like he's a guy that when I watch him play, he's a 90s caliber player. I know going from 89 to 90 isn't this crazy jump, but it more just signifies where you rank, like the tier of players that you're in. So bumping him up 1, maybe 2, I think will be fine. I'm not that mad at his rating, but he does still feel a little underrated like a bunch of other players. Adrian Amos is at 88. I'm fine with that. Winfield, McCourty, Jimmy Ward at 87 all seems about right to me. Marcus Williams at 86, another guy I've always felt was kind of underrated in Madden. I feel like he's more of a high 80s guy. The range that he has is something not a lot of safeties possess. He's, obviously a former Saint, so I've watched him a lot. Now he's on the Ravens. I just always felt like he's more of an 88, 89-ish type guy. He's that good. He's oftentimes called a top 10 safety in the league by a lot of people, but never close to a top 10 rated safety in Madden. So I think you could bump him up. Quandre Diggs, another guy I feel like usually a little underrated. I think you could bump him up a little bit as well. You got Eddie Jackson at 83, Javon Holland at 83. I think he's going to move up a lot this year. Marcus May at 83 as well. Adrian Phillips at 82. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Jeremy Chin, John Johnson, Justin Reed, Kyle Duggar, Von Bell, all at 82. CJ's another guy I always think is rated pretty low, but he's not really a safety. He's more of a nickel. He plays predominantly in the nickel position, and he's one of the better nickels in the league. I think if anything, they need to just change his position to cornerback and bump him up a little bit. I think that might be affecting his rating a little bit, but he doesn't play safety a whole ton. He's mostly in the slot, and that's where his best abilities are. So I just don't ever think he's properly rated, but he's also listed at the position that he doesn't predominantly play either. Amani Hooker, Kareem Jackson, and Xavier McKinney round out the next group of players at an 81 overall. Then you've got Anthony Harris, Eric Rowe, Jabril Peppers, Javon Curse, and Logan Ryan at an 80. Darnell Savage, Jalen Thompson, Jaquaski Tart, Cameron Curl, and Rodney McLeod at a 79. Honestly, when it comes to the safeties, this is probably the group I have the least complaints with out of all the ratings they've released so far. I think the safeties are all pretty fairly rated for the most part and are in somewhat of the right order, other than a few guys that I would switch around, but overall I'm not too mad at them. Now if you want to see the wide receiver ratings and the pass rusher ratings, check out these videos right here on the screen.